guys, God is in medias res, as the classical poets used to say, in the middle of things. But it is a singular honor, a pleasure, and a privilege to have on my homeboy, Dee Burton. Welcome to the Baying of the Hound, brother.
Oh, man. Beautiful, glorious. Loving to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, it's just such an absolute joy to have you here. You've been one of those guys I've been after for a while, and we'll come on to that in a moment.
Yeah.
So we've just been talking about the COVID epidemic and how that's impacted our day-to-day things. And like myself, your opinion of it seems to be it sucked in so many different ways. But by the same token, the pressure and the stresses and all the catastrophe and the chaos that goes around us has led to so many new opportunities for people if you recognize those. And I think that's a fair assessment, don't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's just going off of what we were just talking about, how I know several instructors that have opened up the platform of the whole Zoom way of teaching online. And they're saying their business is booming. It's crazy how what one perceived disaster turns into a blessing on a total new platform that nobody would have ever really tapped into wholeheartedly if this didn't happen.
I mean, I singularly regret not investing in Zoom stock before this all kicked off because
you and the rest of the universe, man. Holy Zoom literally went from, and these aren't accurate figures, but I'm just giving an example. It went from like worth $1 to like $1,000 in all of like a share and all of like a week, a day.
I mean, it's meteoric. I mean, the funny thing is I've used Zoom before in like professional work-based capacities.
Yeah.
So it was just a thing, like, you know, and it's also weird that Facebook must be kicking themselves because they actually took away their ability to group chat in their messenger system just before this. They took that away in November. So, man, sucks to be done. I'm sure he's drying his tears with he's down to his last 20 billion or something like that. I don't know.
Right. And then you throw in the fact that it just came out that all of these advertisers have pulled their money from Facebook, billions of dollars from Facebook, because of, you know, what they're choosing not to, what they're choosing to post, basically, or to allow to be posted, right?
Yeah.
They're not willing to take a stance on some things. And so all these advertisers have pulled billions. And then you look at what you just said, they just took away a platform for group meetings. They're kicking themselves in the butt right now, man.
They really are. And I think a lot of that happens. I mean, I remember when Facebook first started, because everyone was on MySpace.
Yes.
I wasn't, you know, because I was a bit of a dinosaur back then. So for me, I just I jumped onto this new Facebook thing. And next thing you know, you mentioned MySpace now, and it's like, you blow the dust and get the cobwebs off it. There's like 3 people still using it.
Absolutely.
But it does bring us on to something. So, you know, when we talk about within that Zoom framework and things, because for years, the perceived wisdom was that you can't train remotely. You have to be there with someone. You have to be there, you know, physically getting the knocks in, the blood, the sweat, the tears, and all that sort of thing. Now, I was always a little vacillating back and forth on it, because although I was banging that drum that, no, you've got to go to a real club. I took a look at my video collection and my book collection and my magazine collection, and I was like, oh shit, I've been learning stuff remotely for decades now.
You know what? You're absolutely right. And I think to add into that, though, because see, not everybody is torn from the same cloth as you. So, and many other people, right? So you have all this amassed knowledge in terms of journals and books and things like that you've learned from, and you will train that stuff. But then what you would do, and what the well-learned person should do and would do as well, is they will go and seek out a teacher, though, that has mastered that, so that you can exchange hands with them, right? It doesn't have to be every day, but you need to be able to feel what the energy is, the right energy is, and then you can go back into your lab and start growing from that. So it's a hand in hand. So I think that like the people that you're teaching, like overseas and across the globe and things like that through Zoom, at some point they're going to have to touch hands with you so that you can feel, and that they can feel what it's supposed to be like, right? To get
Absolutely.
that true feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the missing ingredient that is when you talk about learning from video, learning from books, there's two things you have to have. One, someone else with you. You've
Yes.
got to be able to get at least a live feed, you know? I mean,
Yes.
sure, you can go through forms. I mean, even I hate patterns. I mean, it was that running joke in the Jeep Athletic Association that I'm the highest ranked instructor with the least ability to remember a set pattern.
Right.
I can, do you know what I mean? Sing still thinks it's a miracle I can do sombrada.
Right. Oh my God.
But you have to have that into place. It's like, this is what I'm going to do. This is how it's supposed to work. Now you give me a little bit of pushback. Okay, now and you have to have that feedback. So that's that one of those missing ingredients. But again, you're also right that you have to have that person that polishes you, and they have to have that, especially with some of the stuff that we do.
Absolutely. I mean, and especially, and if you. One of the things that I'm always like teaching people is, you know, in terms of being better and doing better. So if you are pushing that concept of be better, do better, then you're going to have to get with somebody that's better than you. Yeah. You have to, and because that's the only way that you're going to get better.
That actually brings on, and I don't plan this. And when you send the message out, what do we talk about? So I always riff, let's see where we end up. But it brings out that very interesting thing, and it's also topical right now at the moment as well. And if we apply that to the police training protocols that we go through. Now, I'm not talking about the whole policing training endeavor with regards to also the law inputs and all the other bits and pieces that go with it. I'm specifically talking about the hard and soft-based tactics now. Because for those that don't know, hope Dee will mind me mentioning this, if we call him Officer Dee Burton for a reason. Like me, he's got a law enforcement background, and he's done law enforcement training and things. Now, the biggest criticism that we're seeing leveled around at the moment is what the police do and the techniques that they do and the tactics that they do. Obviously, we don't need to get too much into the news on that. Everyone should be aware of it. Yeah. But at what point is there the responsibility for that on the officer? And at what point does that remain with the department? And I'll clarify that question a little further, because in the department, especially when you first start out, if you get maybe a month of unarmed defensive tactics and subject control tactics and communications, that's about all you get. And it's not even in a solid month. It's like a week here, a week there, spread throughout your academy days. Yes. Then when you're out in the field, if you get in once a year to do a requalification, you're probably doing well. So they tell you what you can and can't do, and then they say, off you go. And there's no other context along with that. So for me, obviously coming from a martial arts background, it was less of a concern because I was still training. But for so many others out there, the first input they get is pretty much the last input they get. And then they get their annual tick in the box after that. Where do you draw the line as a training officer between the departmental responsibility to ensure that that's being maintained and an individual's responsibility to ensure that they can still apply what they know?
Wow. Okay, so, well, now I run a police academy now. So my training perspective and things like that have grown over the years. And one of the first things that is pivotal that I try to implore to departments is to, one, hire the right person. One. Absolutely. Like if we don't hire the right people, then everything is for naught. We're just rolling the dice. And there's ways that you can streamline that and do that to a better and higher degree, right? So that's one. And then two, it's always about, for me, it's about attitude. And I always, for me personally, I never ever allowed anyone, my department, or anyone to dictate my professional growth and my personal growth, right? So a lot of times, and I mean, and you've heard it too over the years, I'm positive that, well, is the department paying for it? If the department's not paying for it, well, I'm not going to that training, man. Screw that. Like I have never ever thought that way, because I'm always like, this is the perfect. Can you hear me? I
can hear you. Your pitch has gone out, but I can still hear you, brother.
Okay, so this is the perfect. The perfect attitude is to always be seeking to be better, right? And I instill that in my recruits. All the freaking time, every year, every month, probably almost every day. But I instill that in them, that the need to do better and be better, it can't hinge upon my department paying for it and my department pushing me to do it. You have to want to be great at whatever it is that you do, right? So I think if we tackle that from that mindset of, one, hiring the right people, and then two, instilling into people, into these officers, the need to want to be better and do better. Because let's face it, the academy only gives you the basics, right? It's only so much time, right? So we can only give you the basics, pretty much an introduction into things that you need to know.
Correct.
Your department is, they follow a set of rules. For us in California, it's called POST, the Peace Officer Standards and Training, right? So they set the guidelines for what every department and what each academy must give. They give you the least amount of hours that you have to provide to officers. So you know as well as I know, if you give somebody the least amount of hours, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do the least amount of hours.
Yep.
Right? If your expectations are in the sewer, guess what people are going to do? They're going to operate at sewer level. So the state government needs to up the ante, one, in terms of raising the hours, in terms of training time and practice that departments and officers need. But then officers need to, hey man, they need to change their attitude too, and want to be better and do better, so that we can perform better, right, when we get into certain situations.
I mean that's a fair assessment too, because it's the subject control tactics is unique because it's the one that in theory you've got the biggest amount of liability in terms of the effect that can have on someone.
Absolutely.
But like you don't get any additional law input as things go, unless the law changes fundamentally, in which case obviously you'll get an update to the statutes and things. Yeah. But it's like you don't like get a requalification on, well, this is a theft and this is a homicide, and this is, you taught that, you're expected to run with it and know it and retain that knowledge. And you're always kind of keeping out of the back of your mind sort of thing. But the physical skills, they deteriorate so rapidly. And I see so few people actually invest their own time in it, because like the fittest, you always say like to these, and you probably say the same thing because I was told this when I left, and I've done the academy a couple of times now in England and obviously away from that. You say you'll never be fitter than when you leave because you're now being paid to work out. You'll never be this fit again. So don't lose that shit,
Yep. Absolutely. I often say that as well. And I'm tired. And the part of this is that it pisses me off too about that logic. Why is the fit, and every officer knows this, the fittest time that you'll ever be in your career for most officers is in the academy. Yep. Because we force you to work out. Like there's no choice, right? And that should piss officers off. That should piss the public off. I don't want I want officers when they show up to the scene I need to be confident. I want you to look like Secret Ninja Squirrel, man. Like I need to be confident when you show up to the scene. I just do. And you know as well as I know, the better prepared you are, and the more confident you are in your skills, guess what? The least you really have to use them. It's like magic when that happens.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That does also bring in, there's almost a paradox or misunderstanding of it, because I don't know what it's like culturally down there, but certainly over here, there's the guys that do very, very little. And then there's the guys that are basically every 10 minutes their alarm goes off and they eat a protein shake or a carrot stick. And they've got it like kind of like meticulously planned down. And like say, oh man, I'm going for my run, or I've got to do my cardio, my CrossFit. And it's like, well, fantastic. You're in great shape. Yeah. You can't fight fucking sleep. Because do you know what I mean? And so they invest all this time in looking like a fitness model or recover men's health. But yet when push comes to the shove, I wouldn't trust them to punch a ticket, let alone punch an offender. And so what do you think the reticence is to actually invest in something like, a jiu-jitsu, a wrestling, even something like a boxing skill base, just anything that's going to give them that ability to keep their skills honed and polished? What do you think the reticence is for officers to do that on their own time?
Man, the only thing I can say, that I mean, I just wish that more officers took the time, because everything is a balance, right?
Of course.
So, you know, I for sure, I need you to be fit, but there's a difference between athletic fitness and fighting fitness and mental stability, right?
Absolutely, there is.
These are totally different things. And to go along with what you were saying, like what you often see is officers, they focus so heavily on the fitness athletic part and lag in the physical and the combative and mental well-being part.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't, in this job, I'll say this, in this job, you need both, and you can't just focus on one. You need both. And if you're lacking in any of those, in one of those two areas, the chances of you making a very huge mistake and erupting the world in continuous riots and chaos, and chaos is it's very probable. It's highly probable. So I think part of the things that for sure that I'm pushing on my end is a balanced approach with both of those things, and because it can't happen either way. I think the public should expect that stuff from officers, and so they need to push the clergy, push government to put forth those rules, to raise those standards. But then the officers on their end, I tell you, and as one of my other sayings, you know, heavy is the head that wears the crown, man. If you want to don the badge and wear the freaking uniform, hey, dude, I'm expecting you to be a top tier person. Like, I'm expecting you to live in a different realm. I'm not expecting you to make the same dumb mistakes that everybody else makes. Just like we hold doctors, we hold priests, we hold pilots to a higher fucking level. I'm sorry if I'm cursing. Can I curse on here? I'm not serious.
Fuck, cunt, bollocks.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, man, but
that's all right, bro.
This is the stuff that I keep like pounding into these new officers' heads. Like, you want to wear the badge, you want to have this power or this perceived power that the public gives us, and you want to have the title. Well, guess what, dude? It comes with a certain type of responsibility. I expect priests to act on a certain level and not do stupid stuff. I expect pilots to be on their game all the time. I expect doctors to not screw up surgeries. This is what comes with the job. Yeah. And you have to have that type of mindset all the time. Leadership is not just a role. It's a freaking lifestyle that you have to live on a daily basis.
And what a beautiful way to actually sum it up. There is an expectation. If a pilot is crashing 1 out of every 1,000 planes, there's an issue. There's an issue with that training, you know? It's like, yes. Why we every 999, the 1,000 that's hitting the mountain, why is this happening? And we'd be all over that. But policing, and I'm not going to pick on the states here, although it will sound like I am. The US training, because of the nature of where you are, and I've used this analogy before, if you look at Europe, we have the UK, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, and everything else that goes along with it. So we've got all these different countries with their different cultures, their different makeups, their different department requirements, all that sort of stuff too. So you basically then got that same thing, but under the banner of this is one place. And it's not. The US is like Europe. It's just that you all happen to have a common language there. Yeah. And so you then, unfortunately, get scaled as one country. So then you'll say, well, look at the rates that, you know, Iceland doesn't kill their police. It's like, well, yeah, Iceland could probably fit in the States like 30 times over and shit. I'm not a geography guy, so I don't know if that's even accurate, so please don't pick me up on it. But you then, within the US, you've not got any form of standardization to the training because there's no standardization to the funding. You then got 3 or 4 different departments fighting over jurisdictional things, and then you've got cross-border. So there's a whole maze to unravel before we even get down to the fundamental pieces of things.
Yes.
But the US almost seems to have a knee-jerk reaction to anything that we do wrong. And I say we, I'm not even in the police anymore, but I still kind of
right.
anything that policing does wrong. when we're called out on it, and I'm going to use the Black Lives Matter slogan as an example of this. So you say, well, Black Lives Matter. It doesn't mean nothing else matters. It means right now, this is something we need to look at. But then you get, well, blue lives matter, all lives matter, white lives. It's like, what? Whoa, whoa, whoa. And we're very knee-jerk reactionary in the way we speak things as police officers and as police services, because we get very defensive because it feels like we're being personally attacked. How do we condition ourselves to be able to look objectively at what's being said rather than simply prevent counter statistics like, well, only 1% of these people are dying, so therefore 99% are fine, therefore it's not a problem? How do we break that mindset of becoming defensive in our reactions and instead look at the message or the complaints or indeed the issues that are being raised?
Wow, brother. I've thought about this quite a bit, and honestly, I think that it starts before you even become a law enforcement officer.
Mm.
I think it starts with education, the educational system, right? The educational system that we all go through from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade through college. I think from the beginning, when we start learning history, it has to be taught correctly, right? Because we all know that our thoughts and our belief system and things, they're pretty much fed to us at an early age, right? So if you're fed a very dominant, one-sided way of viewing things your whole life, when somebody comes at you and counters that with valid real facts, it creates a dissonance in your brain. And so immediately what you try to do psychologically is combat that. You immediately no, that can't be right. No. It can be right. And guess what else could happen? There can be two inconvenient truths that collide together, right? So the prime example that goes along with what you were saying is, well, police officers kill more white people than they do black people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, you're absolutely right. But when we look at it percentage wise, you kill more African Americans twice as much as you do white people. They're both true. They're both facts. So yeah, you do kill more. Of course you do. You're like 70% of the population. Duh. That makes sense, right?
It's true. I can't argue. It's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, right. But if you look at it per capita and percentage wise, when we look at the numbers, it just happens to be that you kill African Americans about 2 times, or maybe a little bit more so than you do white people. But those are two inconvenient truths that we have to align with and be like, okay, I see both ways, and I understand it. So back to your original question, people have to be understanding and be open to whatever, to what other people are saying. And the community, we are the community. It's not us against them.
Yeah,
right?
Very true. Very true.
We are you guys. We are them. And our power is only as powerful as you provide to us. But that power is based upon a trust. The people in the community, the vast majority of people have bestowed a trust on law enforcement. And when we violate that trust, we have to own up to it. Like, stop acting like we're God's gift to the land and we don't make mistakes. Like, the history of law enforcement in this country wasn't marred by racism and murder and things like that's the history. And I'm saying it's okay, dude. We accept it. Now once we accept it, we can move on and grow from there. But to totally negate that doesn't happen, and that's still that underbelly in a lot of places is still there and still operate, to negate that is just being disingenuous. It really is. And that's what I think people are kind of upset at, I'm not gonna even try to sugarcoat it. People are a lot of upset a lot upset at those type of things because, you know, you just got to be honest with yourself, man. Law enforcement, I mean, it's like a marriage, man. I tell you, like, it's like a marriage. And if the community keeps telling you, just think about it in your marriage. Like, if your wife keeps telling you that something is wrong for years and years and decades, I'm like, hey, motherfucker, don't be upset when she starts burning down the house and moving shit out. She's been telling you for decades that, look, I don't approve of you kicking my ass. You're going over the line. You're doing too much. You're doing too much. You're doing too much. And then you don't listen. You like, so what do you expect the community as a whole to do? And I'm not condoning, of course, I'm not condoning violence and burning down buildings and things of that nature. But but think of it in that sense. That's your wife packing up shit and leaving, right? That's her being like, I'm fed up with your mess. You know, there's a reason why most law enforcement officers are on their second and third marriage, J. Coop. That's because they don't fucking listen. They don't listen. They don't listen, man. Like, and it's funny, and I hate to put it in those terms, but I'm like, there's a reason. There's a reason why most law enforcement officers are on their second and third marriage, because your asses don't listen when your wives or when your husbands are telling you, hey, I don't approve of this. I don't approve of this. It's going wrong. You're doing too much. I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I'm not happy. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're paying half your 401k and retirement plan, and you're paying the piper.
Yeah, it becomes a 20.5k.
Right. I'm sorry. I said a lot, but
I got to be honest. I've never heard the marriage analogy used before, and I think it's perfect. I think it's absolutely perfect. We had a saying drummed into us back in the UK when we started, which is policing by consent. And yes, it's like you can only effectively operate if the society allows you to do so, because at its best, I mean, I'll take the city of Calgary as an example, the one I'm in at the moment. The population is a little over 1 million. The PD's got about 1,500 officers. We ain't keeping control if the entire city says, hey, screw you guys, we're not listening to you anymore. So it's that consent thing. We should be upholders of the law, not enforcers of the law. We should be with a fire extinguisher, with a seatbelt. We're there for if you crash, not for anything else. So the marriage analogy, I think, is a fantastic one, because you don't, if you do something wrong consistently, you don't point out all the other things that you do right, because that isn't the issue right now. And that's perfect. That's actually probably the cleanest, and I'm stealing it going forward. Unless anyone asks, I'm pretending it's mine. If they ask, I'll say it's yours. If they don't ask, I'm going to look like I'm, supervising my analogies of great.
Absolutely, man. Take it and run with it, because I think that narrative needs to be spread across. Look, man, own your shit. That's all. Just be accountable. Own your stuff when it needs to be owned, and then we can move on. But if you never own it, there will never be any progress. There will never be any progress if you don't own it. Yeah,
agreed. Wholeheartedly agreed. And it also, when we look at what we have to take responsibility for, both as individual officers and both as individual departments, we also have to communicate the difficulty it is being an officer, because every time, let's say on average, I go to, 10 calls. I use 10 calls a day as an average. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Depends if they got a sale on coffee and things and whatever. Or if we'll take 10 calls as a standard. Out of that 10 calls, I could be super nice at the first one, super nice at the second one, super nice at the third one, super nice at the fourth. By the time I'm getting to the 9th call and you're getting beaked at and chewed out and sworn at and spat at, by the time you hit that 10th, you're at that level where it's like, why did that guy flip off? It's like, because he's just spent 8 hours of a 10-hour shift being abused, spat at, and this 10th one has just come and pushed him over the edge. And it has to be, this may be your first encounter with a police officer ever. Certainly that day, you may be the 300th person I've spoken to today, and my patience is kind of wearing fucking thin. So we have to sometimes let the public know whilst we will try and respect you guys as much as we can, you have to
Yes.
kind of meet us halfway, because I know we're enforcing the law, and I know that, you know, it seems shitty, but bear with us, because we want to go home at the end of the day, same as you guys do. So I think that part of that education piece comes in as well. That brings us round to the concept of mindfulness and that ability to recenter and reset, which was so important. I mean, don't get me wrong, I could flip off with the best of them. I'd lose my shit when I really shouldn't have done. And that's when a good partner's like, okay, Jay, you might want to take a step back on this one. Because again, it just hits that trigger point, or that point where you're going to blow. But it's that ability to step away, take a breath, and realize, okay, and now we're on to the next thing. Do you include within your training for the guys and the guys that you put through the academy that ability to recenter, or is that something you're just trying to bring in right now?
Yes. And actually, the great thing is, man, Post, who is the certifying body, they are really starting to implement and push in, actually this year, more of a self-centered and mindfulness approach for officers, right? Because now, so it's actually going to be part of the curriculum, learning how to self-center and recognize when things aren't right with you, or things aren't going right with you mentally, right? When things aren't going right, when you feel as if you've had enough, and maybe too much trauma throughout the years, too much trauma on one shift, too much trauma throughout the week. What do you do, and how do you deal with it? How do you take a step back and center yourself? We were doing that to some degree anyway at my academy, just because. But now it's going to be more of a legislatively mandated type of thing, like in the curriculum, where we're teaching that. And I mean, there's still so much that we are behind the curve on in California, and a lot of people talk crap about California and training and case law and things like that. But I'll tell you this, California, and I've been around a lot of states, and I've been to a lot of trainings across the country and in other countries. And as far as the U.S. is concerned, California's training is absolutely in the top of the spear type deal.
Nice.
Right there. And I mean, there's a couple of other states that swim around that area too, but by absolutely, in terms of progressiveness and pushing this thing and pushing training, again, we are not where we should be. By no freaking means are we there. But compared to other places, holy crap, we are far beyond. And so I will give California maybe not a high 5, I'll give them like a high 3 on being progressive and pushing forth the theme and really trying to grow on the curriculum of mindset and mindfulness, and really looking to help officers, man, because you know as well as I know, and maybe some of the listeners, like, the job is a very over time, it's very traumatic, right? Mm-hmm. And I always use the analogy, like with soldiers in the military, when they go off to war, a lot of their trauma is in an instant, right then and there. You know, they may be deployed for like a year, but they come back for, they leave and come back. They leave for like a month, and then they go back, get shipped back, whatever. So the trauma is very instant. And their military career is about 4 years or so, unless they make a career out of it and it's like goes longer, right? It goes something, it can go longer. But for law enforcement, if you stay the course and you go a full like 20 plus 30-year career, that is trauma over pounded into your psyche, into your neurological development for 20, 30 years.
Yeah, it's insidious.
It's crazy, right? And I can make the argument that that trauma can be, it's just as detrimental, absolutely just as much as detrimental as as a soldier going off to war. Because and then I'm sorry, the public to have to say this too, but what many of the, maybe your listeners and people in the public, the general public don't know is that when I gotta go to a call of somebody who's taking their infant child.
Lost your signal a little there, brother.
I gotta go. Huh?
I lost your signal
sorry,
there.
can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay. I was saying that what the public may not understand is that for law enforcement officers over a 20, 30-year period, the trauma that you experience is in your neurological makeup.
Yeah.
So if I have to go to a call that I experienced, and it's a parent that took their doggone infant child by the legs and slammed him into a wall and killed the baby, I respond to that, right? Just because the parent didn't like the baby crying at night. The parent couldn't get any sleep, so they lost it and killed the kid. But guess what? That week as well, I respond to a call of a mother that has drowned their infant baby in a bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
And then the week after that, I may be in a fight, in a scuffle, trying to save a kid from getting abused by their parent, or save a wife or a husband. Like, so imagine that community over a 20 to 30-year period.
Yeah.
And you expect, law enforcement is human too, right? We're not superhuman. And it goes right along with what you were saying, that the public has to understand. I accept the responsibility that the shield and the badge carries. I take that wholeheartedly. But guess what? I'm also human. And those things affect you over time. They affect you. I don't care who you are over time. You become a little bit cynical. Maybe for some people, a lot cynical,
mm-hmm.
right? You become jaded, right? You become very short with people sometimes. And you're right. On that 10th call of somebody in your face arguing at you, you just went to a car crash where the young college student was about to experience her first freaking day of college, and some drug driver smashed into her and killed her. Like, it takes a toll on you, right? So I say for the law enforcement community and the people, the regular citizens, I'm sorry if we're not 100% every day, but we know the responsibility that we've taken on. And especially if you teach law enforcement officers, like, you know as well the responsibility and the backpack, the heavy weight and the burden that they take on every day. So just understand that, community. And it takes a little time to wash that off and to get back to normal, right? To kind of recalibrate yourself to be able to function in a balanced state. So mindfulness training, I'm glad it's coming down and it has arrived. I think we got to do more of it, and it has to be a staple for departments and academies worldwide, because the job is not an easy job mentally. If everyone is honest with themselves, it's not. No, and Jacob, I was just talking to a friend about mental health, because that was my I was trained in that as well, with my graduate degree and things like that. So I was talking to them about this. I said, and I've been saying this for years now, I think that law enforcement officers, especially those that are on patrol, I think that they should go see a shrink every 2 years.
Yep.
Every 2 years.
Yep. I'm an assessment.
Just for a recalibration, just like how you do your car for a checkup every 6,000 miles or 10. I gotta go. Hey, the chief captain says I gotta go. It's my time of year, dude. I gotta go get recalibrated with the psychologist that knows law enforcement, that's familiar with the lifestyle, that's familiar with what we've been through and what we can and what we do experience. I think a recalibration is needed. Every other year, done. Let's go get recalibrated so we can get out there and give the community our best. Just, you know, every time we come in contact with them. I think it's far overdue. I think it's needed. And hey man, I'm all for it. So that's what I'm pushing from here on out. And at least that's what I'm gonna consistently say that, because I think it's important, because the public doesn't really know all those examples that I gave you. They don't know. And that's okay. They don't know. They don't need to know all that necessarily, every nook and cranny, because that's what we're here for. We're here to handle that situation or handle those events so that you don't have to worry about that.
Yes,
but understand that that stuff happens on a regular basis and you don't see it on the news, but that is common occurrence, stuff like that.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that's one of the biggest survival strategies I did. And I was actually asked this question when I did a podcast a couple of years ago, and it was just shortly after I'd left the police. And they said, how did you cope with it? And how were you able to walk away from the police when some people find it so hard? And what do you give anyone advice? And I said, don't hang out with cops when you're not at work.
Yep, that's it. That's it.
And they looked at me surprised. I said, I'll qualify that. I said, now, some of my friends that I hang around with after work are cops, but I'm hanging around with them because we like martial arts, or we like pro wrestling, or we like something else. But when you hang around with the same people outside of work that you hang around inside of work, you're in a bubble. And it's very hard to get out of that bubble, and it becomes all defining. And it's a very, very hard thing to break. And it stops you because now your identity, everything about you is that job. I'm not saying that you don't have it, because it's not a regular job. We know that.
Yes.
But you have to be able to recognize that it is still a job.
Yes.
It's not personal if someone's beating at you. It's not personal when they're criticizing the police. It's a situation-specific thing. And unless you did it, in which case own that shit, they're not saying you did it. When they criticize, the UK for, doing something wrong on a foreign policy issue, it's not every Englishman. It's the country as a whole.
Yes.
So stepping away from policing and taking time to not be with, and very, very important, take at least one day out of your week and don't see a single cop or speak to a single cop all day will do wonders for your mental well-being, because we are the world's worst for winding ourselves up.
Yeah, it goes back to that. I tell you, Coop, there's a reason why most law enforcement officers are on their second or third marriage.
Absolutely.
There's a fucking reason.
It is. And it's that hypervigilance thing, So this is your normal operating standard. When you're at work, you have to be here. But of course, now you've built a deficit. So now when you're off work, you crash down here because you've got to build this shit back up again. So everyone at work gets you here. Everyone at home gets you here. This ain't going to fly.
Yes. Yes. Yo, if your friends, if to all the officers that may be listening or that will listen to this podcast, if all your friends are nothing but cops, you are losing right now.
Yes.
You're losing.
Yeah.
You're losing at life. How about that? You're losing. You are cheating yourself of a well-rounded, fruitful life if all of your friends are only cops. And I know this is going to sear to the heart of some of you. It's going to hurt your feelings to hear that. And, this guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Hey, dude, all I'm doing is offering you a perspective. You ain't got to listen to me. But I can tell you what, just pay attention to life. Be an observer. Look at all your friends that only have cop friends. Look at yourself and ask yourself, is this really the way I want to be in life? Cynical, always upset, angry, getting into arguments with my wife or my husband or my partner. Just your views become different. You need people that are not in the business because they kind of balance you out. Like I said this to my recruits a few weeks ago when I was talking to them. I'm like, we need people that see things through rose-colored glasses in the world. I need those people. Because I realize that I can't always be the warmonger. I can't always look at things as a fight. and a personal vendetta against me. I need the person to see, oh, that's a beautiful bird. That's a beautiful, because that's going to force me to think outside of my box that I'm confined in all the time with cynical people, with people that don't necessarily like me, with people that don't want a ticket, with people that, it combats that. But if you get around nothing but cops, if you're always around nothing but officers or people in the field, you never force yourself to grow and stretch outside of that perimeter, like you were saying. I need those rose-colored people. I need those people that hug trees. I need you guys. Now I'm not saying sway all the way that side because we need the wolf, right? Like everybody can't be the freaking wolf, right? Everybody can't be the person that combats against the wolf, the sheepdog, right? That whole analogy.
Yeah.
I need you to have both sides though, right? And so, but that's part of the responsibility, Jay, that we have to take on when we work in the profession. Those of us that aren't like active out there, but we still swim around in that lifestyle, right? But so that's the responsibility that we have to take on in terms of teaching the older ones and the up and coming officers. We have a responsibility to teach them, hey man, you need not have friends that are all cops. I need you to be balanced in your life. I need you to take that time out. Everything is not about SWAT. Everything is not about crashing in that house. Everything is not about doing X, Y, and Z that's related to the job. I need you to have a balance, and that's a hard thing. It's hard. It's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I figure that if we can, at least at my position, if I can get them in the beginning and try to just pound that theory or that belief or that mindset into their head, that it will hopefully do some good. But we'll see. I mean, that I think this is a great time. It's a shitty time to come into this field, but it's also a great time to come into this field because so much the growth potential is there. And you're a student of history as well. There has been no prosperity and growth in terms of a civil rights, in terms of making things right amongst the populace. There has been no growth without struggle.
No, the appetite's never been bigger for it. It has to be said.
Yeah.
And there's been several key points you can point to along the way in all aspects of policing. I mean, in the UK, we had, the Toxteth riots, and we had a lot of stuff back in the 80s, the Stephen Lawrence case back there as well. And obviously, when we come to the US, we've got Rodney King being the one that most people think of, and all the bits that came from that. So the appetite right now has never been bigger. And there's a chance for police to return to the source, police of the people, policeman, man of the people. And we have the opportunity to do that. And if that makes the job easier, it's like guys saying, well, I'm not going to go and deal with all these mental health people anymore. Let the nurses deal with it. Good. They should. That's their job. I'm good with this.
Yes. So that's what I'm telling. So that's what I've been preaching to, people like to officers. They're like, they're on the poopy pot, man. They're like, oh man, the community doesn't understand. Like, this is all BS. This is crazy. But hey, time out, dude. Guess what? It's all about perspective. I need you to shift your perspective to this. Like you just said, Jay, like what's going to come out of this is people are really going to take an in-depth look at what do we want our law enforcement officers to really respond to and deal with.
Boom.
Right? I'm like, hey, fucker, this should be great news for you. Like, this is great news. The job is going to be exponentially easier in terms of it's really going to streamline what you really got into the job to do, right? And that's to go get the shitheads. Get the shitheads, throw them in jail, and make life better for everybody in the community, right? That's essentially what your job is. Enforce, obviously enforce the law, the rules. But essentially, what you're doing is you're holding people accountable so that society can be safe, right? So if I don't have to deal with mental health calls, if I don't have to deal with transient population issues, if I don't have to deal with those type of things, that's going to make my job exponentially easier. Oh my gosh, right? So guess what, you guys? You should want this movement to happen, because for those reasons alone, you want this movement to happen, and you should be behind this movement 100%. There are absolutely some things that need to be restructured within law enforcement, within the judicial system, right? There are absolutely some disparities and some discrepancies that need to be made right. But you should want that, officer, because this is going to make your job so much easier.
To me, it's a no-brainer. I'll remember, and I'll use a little. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, though, brother, because we're getting towards the end of our hour.
No problem.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, I'm loving it. Would you be up for doing this again in a couple of weeks? Is something to do a follow-up?
Absolutely, Jay. Absolutely, because I think I honestly believe that, and I'm thankful to the creator that you asked me to speak on your show, because this is the perfect venue for that. And if anything, what we're doing is that we're forcing people to think. That's it. It's not about me. It's not about you. We're forcing the educational process to happen in your brain. Like, could this person be right? Let me look into that. Let me do some deep thought about change, about how this would look. And that's all we're doing. But the conversation needs to be had.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I'm going to actually throw out some questions on the floor. I've got one of the guidelines that's got some questions for you as well. But I'll summarize what, to me, and this happened a few years ago, you know, when you hit those little revelation points in your life and you see, why have I never seen this before? What, you know, like, and I always joke, like Hickson Gracie putting his head to the side before he did an Uber. It's like, why have I not known this before? This is, but when it came to me was when I was working in cells, and I used to do the bail hearings. So I used to present the case for the prosecution to the magistrates. I would argue against the defense lawyers. Now, I love that intellectual back and forth. I used to really enjoy it. But I used to see there was one guy that was consistently coming in, and he was always getting arrested for breach of his probation or breach of his release conditions and all this sort of stuff coming in. And I looked at it, and it was normally like, you know, possession of alcohol or drug paraphernalia. And this guy was coming in, and no exaggeration, this is no exaggeration, he'd been brought in 40 times within the past like 2 years for like an alcohol breach or a drug breach. And now I'm thinking like, well, if you're releasing a guy that's got a drug and alcohol problem with the conditions not to do drug and alcohol, just keep him in. You save yourself a lot of trouble. Just keep the guy in, because you know he's going to come. That's like saying, you know, you're not allowed to walk on 2 legs. At some point I'm going to do it, so you might as well just keep me out. But what the kicker was for it, and what really brought this home to me, was the warrant and the offense that originally generated this was from Ontario. So it wasn't even from the province that I was actually enforcing this. All the officers were enforcing this. And so I was like, I called them and I said, I've got this warrant for this guy for, I think it was a shoplifting or theft. It wasn't like, you know, capital murder or anything like that. It was a property-based crime. And I said, do you want this guy? I said, because we'll ship him back if you do your 48-hour, you know, get him. We'll just put him on a plane. We don't want him. Are you going to cancel the warrant? No, it's on the system. It'll expire eventually anyway. So we were enforcing and had been enforcing for 5 years conditions on a warrant on an offense that they didn't give a shit about. So guess what we were now doing? And this is the cycle, because we're breaching this guy and we're now breaching him on the conditions, and we release him on a new set of conditions, reinforcing those conditions. Only now he's got ticks against him for breaching. So he's now a flight. And I said, this is stupid. So I wiped every single condition he had over the original warrant, and I put a note on file. I said, I just want him released. And the magistrate said, don't you want conditions? I said, no. So I don't care. I really don't care. They don't care. Why do I care? Because I'm now creating a criminal.
Yes, absolutely.
And it was this big, this is horrible. Why am I?
Yes.
And it wasn't like he was like an innocent guy. I mean, he was a bit of a shitbag, but I'm like, we're making him shittier. How about we take one chance to make him less shitty? And let's see if we
Yes,
can give the
yes,
guy a
we
chance
are.
to be less shitty, you know?
And that's those systemic issues, though, that I really honestly think that, I mean, to a large degree, I think police officers are getting the short end of the stick because they can easily be picked out. Like
Yeah,
they're on
yes.
the front line,
They're visible.
and that's visible. And so people gonna automatically pick law enforcement because they hate getting tickets, and we did something to them because they broke the law. Nobody shit. I don't like to get told what to do, so I know other people don't like to get told what to do all the time, right? So law enforcement are the easy pick, but it's the system that people should really be like, hey man, the system needs to change. That's where the real injustices and the real crap is going on. And just like with the example that you just gave, the same example goes on out here. Like, it's like, what? Why are we keeping this dude should be in a drug program? We should be mandating this dude into some addiction program for like the next year or two. How about that? Like, why do we keep clogging up the system? If we're really about helping and saving lives and helping people's lives, done. He's going off to an addiction program. We see you in another year, dude, for a check-in. Bye-bye. Done. So.
No, and that makes sense to me, brother. I'm going to get Bulldog on. So, Bulldog, I'm going to bring you on screen. You got your question? And let me get you on. There we go. And there we are.
Hi, guys. Fantastic interview. Already looking forward to the next one, I have to say.
Great.
I told you any interview with Dee is always going to be a winner, man. I'm telling you.
Fantastic. Okay, because of the way the interview has gone, I'm going to ask a slightly more all-encompassing question. So we're talking Black Lives Matter, people's perceptions, mental health programs. Can we do this in our lifetime? We talk about things like racism. That's a learned behaviour. Is it too late for us? Our children have learned from us, so is it going to be our grandchildren before we can start to see some change?
Oh, I think that, well, it would be disingenuous of me to say that change hasn't happened. It just has happened incrementally, right? And over time. And I think that we have to accept that change overall, it's a process, right? It's just not going to happen overnight. So we cannot not continue to push the needle forward and erasing racism as much as we can. And again, I spoke about it earlier. A lot of this goes to the educational system. What are we teaching our children in school? Because me, you, Jay, like the listeners, we're all adults, and one thing we know for sure, we're all going to pass on at some point in time. So our true goal is in my mind, is to try to instill in these young people truth. Tell the truth about your country's contribution and the history and the relationship that it's had with people over time. Like, and the ugly truth and the good about it, right? Because it all goes hand in hand. There's some goodness that has happened years down the road. And there's some terrible things that have happened in the beginning, and there's some terrible things that still happen now, but it's okay to talk about it, because if we don't deal with it, we're never going to move on from it. And this stuff keeps on getting rehashed. You know, this goes along with the analogy I gave Jay earlier with the marriage. Like, why does this stuff keep coming up year after year, decade after decade after decade? Hey, it keeps coming up because it was never acknowledged and fixed and made right. So if we don't make it right, if we don't take on the responsibility to make it right, then we're going to keep visiting this all over again. But I'll tell you this is the beautiful thing about this movement that's been going on all across the globe. What's so beautiful as that it just normally, when you see a lot of unrest, especially like, you know, when I go back to like the Rodney King thing and certain type of marches and things like that, normally what you see is overwhelmingly it's the African American or the Black community predominantly. This stuff has been, everybody has had it. Everybody's just fed up, and that's the beautiful thing. So change and people seeing things has happened. So to say that it hasn't happened would be disingenuous of anybody. And I think it's beautiful in that aspect that we got white brothers and sisters, Asian, shoot, Indian, Sikh, like everybody's in on the movement to make the world better. That's all it really is about. It's just that Black Lives Matter kind of, as usual, you know, in situations like this, they're the ones leading, you know, they're running head on into it. Just the same thing with the civil rights era. Like, we run head on to it, but and that's fine. But everybody needs to jump in on it because it's going to help everybody in the long run, right? It's just a beautiful thing to see to some degree now. Everybody's in on just making life better, man. Like, why wouldn't you want a better world to live in?
Yeah.
Like,
oh, absolutely. And what's been really nice over here is a lot of sports, soccer, football over here started again. And all of the players are taking the knee, but all of the governing bodies have allowed it. They've not tried to say you're not allowed to make a political statement. So
yeah.
it does seem, say, everybody is on board, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful, man. I talk to a lot of people that don't agree with me. Like, you know, a lot of my friends do. A lot of people, you know, 'cause I'm still in the law enforcement community, and I have a good amalgamation of friends, and I welcome all of their opinions. But nobody can argue with just a better life for humanity. How can you argue with that? Like, right? Like, that's where everything stops. So, you know, so sometimes people just want to be right. They just want to argue something. So my question would be, so are you arguing with a better life for everybody, for humanity? And if you are, then dude, you can't play in my sandbox with me, dude. Like, you're not a part of the fucking team if you don't want a better life for everybody. Who doesn't want that? Like, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry if I'm just rambling, but I'm passionate about it, and I'm passionate about it, and it's just like you guys are, right? And everybody listening obviously has a passion about the message that Jay is putting out here on a weekly basis, and this topic as well. Like, who doesn't want a better world? Like, what asshole wants to I don't know, man. I just don't get it. Somebody was like, Daryl, I thought you were like, you know, breaking arms and fight. I said, that's an aspect that
that's just an aside.
Right. I hope I never have to do stuff like that.
I really think that's just something else that we learn. That's just a bolt-on. Absolutely.
Yeah. Every true warrior,
someone gets it.
Every true warrior, man. Every true warrior wants to avoid using that side of them, right? Like, you want peace, but I am clearly capable of going to the other side if I have to, but doing that to create peace again, right? Doing that to create peace, but ultimately that's what everybody should want. So why wouldn't I care about what you, my brother? Why wouldn't I care about your feelings if I feel like I did you wrong or I've been unjust in some kind of way? I need to examine that with myself. Like, damn, was I really okay? I need to sit with that and let it resonate. If I feel the way I feel and I come back to the same conclusion, then okay, then I guess you have a choice of not being my friend anymore and not talking to me. But internally, I always want, I just want a better life for everybody. I just want a better life for everybody. And the way that I do it is my small avenue of doing it with law enforcement on an academy level. So hopefully it's working, man, and making people better. And I hope I answered your question. I can ramble a little bit.
Awesome.
No problem.
Good question, Bulldog. Thanks for asking, man. I have to say that, again, these hours fly by. From a personal perspective, one reason I wanted you on these, because you're one of those people, as long as we've got guys like you there driving the change, because I left, I got to know, I'm done. As long as we have guys like you there driving that change and pushing it forward, the future's looking bright, bro, because you got so much love and joy in your heart. You really have. And it's just an honor not only to be your friend and your brother, but to know that you're out there fighting a good fight for us, man. So thank you for everything that you do, bro. It's so appreciated.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right. So yeah, we'll book an appointment for a couple of weeks and we'll do this again.
No problem. I'm all for it, brother. Let's do it.
Nice. Let's do it. Let's do it. Awesome. All right, bro. You take care of yourself. Enjoy what's left of your treacherous colonial weekend.
Will do, man. Will do. All right. I'll talk to you guys later. Love you all, and love you too, Jay.
Much love, bye, brother. Take care, man. Bye-bye. So there you have it, guys. Dee's one of those guys that I just love to talk to and hang around. He's just such vibrancy about the way he does things. And to find someone not only that's had different life experiences, different exposures, but has had, you know, different career, different country than me, but we're aligned to that same process. If two people from different countries, different environments, different backgrounds come align and come to that same point and recognize that, and that aligns with the movement going forward, how can that change not happen? How can that not be, you know, something that's then going to move forward? And I'll put this to everybody that's out there. When you look at the way things are pushed forward and the way we portray ourselves, and I'm using the martial arts community as this, but it happens everywhere else. The warrior spirit, the warrior's way, be the warrior, be that. I'm going to challenge you to change, and I'm going to be changing myself. You'll notice a lot of my messages are going to change. Don't be a warrior, because a warrior implies you're a war. Be a guardian. Look after yourself. Look after other people. That role, to me, has more value and more love to it than being a warrior. So be your own guardian. Be a guardian to other people, because when you're guarding something, you're protecting it and you're taking care of it, whether that's your life, whether that's your livelihood, or whether that's everyone else. So be your own guardian of light and let the warriors do their thing wherever they're doing it. That's all from me for this week, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and big thanks again to Dee, man. Love you, my brother. Always good to have you with us. And yeah, so I'll be putting the video about this out soon. Hopefully I'll get my guest list lined up for the next few weeks. I know it's been a bit of a gap since I did the last one. Time with the reopening with COVID, I actually blew my back out last week as well, so I've been hobbling around a little bit. So it's not been the most productive time for me to do my things. But we're back on track. We're back rocking and rolling. And hey, what a way to kick things off. I got as much from that as I'm sure you guys did. So from the Hound, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. I'll hopefully see you all back soon. And whatever you're doing, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and that be the change in the world that we want to see. Take care, everyone. I'll see you soon.